Hello everyone, got another video coming up. This is along the lines of breeding, and it's something that comes up every so often, talked about all the time. In fact, it's been talked about since the beginning of the breed, you know. And I'll just preface it by saying it's something I wrote down here. Uh, the old time breeders didn't show you all their cards, but you didn't need them to if you know how to breed. That comes, from those things we say about Carver. He gave you the cake but not the recipe, and you know there's a lot of different reasons why. Most of the times they don't want you to know how their dogs were bred. Sometimes it's because they didn't want to know, they don't want a dog was stolen, or maybe they didn't know the dog's breeding either, or a lot of different reasons why, you know but a breeder that is that has his own family of dogs and breeds them, a lot of them, not just in pit bulls, but in game fowl, they don't want to reveal their individual pedigrees or their family of dogs pedigrees, or they change them or make them different or whatever. You can call them liars and cheaters and falsifying this and that, but like I said, it's something that's happened since the inception of the breed. If you go way back in history, then you see unknown, 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 right? And that was either because they were unknown, or the breeders were illiterate, they couldn't write down the pedigrees either, or uh, because the dogs they got them from, the people they got their dogs from didn't reveal their breedings, and that goes way back from way back to the beginning, meaning the imported dogs from England and Ireland. That's where you see most of the unknown, 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 right? And that's all the way through the history of the breed. People, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, they make a bigger deal of it than they need to. And what I mean is, you don't need that recipe if you know how to breed dogs, means exactly that. Because what they did in the past is they followed the dogs and they followed the breeders. For example, Leitner, Feely had good dogs. Armitage had good dogs, Kobe, of course, a lot of good dogs. And I'm not saying any one of them breeders ever faked peds or had unknown peds or anything, but behind their dogs there is unknown breedings, unknown, 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 right? So what did they do about it? They just bred the best of what they had. They bred the ones that proved that they could produce and move forward in that direction, and then kept the peds, their own peds, handwritten. And then, from 1898 with the UKC in 1909, which would eventually become the ADBA, they registered their dogs. And most people, even dog fighters, quote unquote dog fighters back then, and breeders, most of them registered their dogs. Believe it or not, it wasn't just a thing; they felt it was a necessity, right? So because those people were known to produce good dogs, that's who others went to, or they traded dogs amongst themselves. You know, I mentioned Frank Shy. He's a real famous game fowl breeder competitor from back in the day. He wrote a little thing about Thomas Dumby Murphy, another famous game fowl breeder of his day. And Murphy wasn't only involved with game fowl; he was involved with race horses and all kinds of stuff. Liquor, all kinds of stuff he was involved in. He was considered to be the top at whatever he decided to get involved with. So Frank Shy tells a story of how he went to Thomas W. Murphy. They were friends. He considered him like a mentor. But he would make statements throughout his articles, that he didn't ask Murphy too much. He didn't question him too much because the retort would be brutal, you know. So he basically just listened, and Murphy would divulge whatever information he wanted. So he ends up getting a rooster from him, right? He didn't know how the bird was bred. Murphy didn't tell him how the bird was bred. Only Murphy knew how the bird was bred. And Frank Shy never asked him how the bird was bred. He knew better not to, because, you know, in the future he may not want to do trades or business with Shy. You know, Murphy wouldn't if he asked all these questions that he wasn't willing, you know. He just took it as he didn't give the information, I didn't ask it. That fowl became a dominant figure in his family of game fowl, in Frank Shy's family. He utilized them, he won with them, and he bred them, and the bird produced. So he just took it as it's a Thomas W. Murphy fowl, and it worked. So he put it in his breeding program, right? And I think some people, and maybe most of the people who were breeders, competitors, or whatever back in the day that bred the dogs from some of these breeders, that they didn't know uh, the background of their pedigrees. That's what they did. They went on the particular dog itself, male or female. And that's what mattered most. First, if the dog was a good one, then if the dog could produce. And they moved forward that way. And, you know, they either kept their pedigree straight after that, or they didn't, but that individual was still utilized in their breeding program, you know. And, you know, that this has been going on forever and ever. So I understand people wanting the true breeding of the dogs, especially if you're purchasing a dog. You want the real breeding of it. And one of the reasons why, not just because, you know, you want to know the truth, but it's also because you want to know how to breed that individual. That's where it kind of gets deep, you know. You want to know which direction you can go. You want to know the family traits, if they retain what that pedigree behind them says. That way, in the future, when you breed them, you know which direction to go. You know which female or male you want to breed them to, or which family, or what crosses best, or what, you know, is the best way to go. You know, there's that element. It's true that can help you. But on the flip side, you know, and this has been said a lot too, none of the dogs have true pedigrees on them. None of them do. There's always some glitch in there. There's always some fake. There's always some unknown. There's always some faking papers, trading dogs, or not even that particular dog. Could be his brother, could be his son, could be her daughter, could be whatever. People make it sound like, you know, some people do, that that's prevalent in the breed. They could be right. It could be that way with everything. The only ones who know how their dogs are bred, honestly, are the breeders themselves. And then it's up to your own reputation, your own integrity, whether you're telling the truth or not, or lack thereof, those traits yourself, you know. Uh, Me, I've learned to accept that. Same thing with some of mine. I was told it's not really bred like this, you know, in the background of my dogs. I didn't care. And I would tell them that. It does not matter, because there's nothing I can do about it anyways. And to know the truth, if you think you finally have gotten to the truth, you could be 99.9% right. There's always that little tiny percentage that you may be wrong too. What you found out was not the truth. And that's why I say, does it really matter? If the dogs perform for you, if they produce for you, does it really matter how they're bred? Because they all come from the same stuff. You know, the only thing, and I've said this way back many years, when people fake peds, the main thing that bothers me is when you make them available to the public, when you're selling your dogs. That's where I think that dishonesty plays a factor. You know, you're a liar. But as far as breeding goes, does it make that much difference? Not in my opinion. And that's been proven through the history of the breed. So if somebody wants to say, yeah, it matters, yeah, it does, it hasn't. So why would it start happening now where that matters? How the dog is really bred matters that much. Common sense would tell you, yeah, it does matter. That's the reason why, right? But that's not what's been proven. If they all have fake peds on them, then where is that? What are you following? What bloodline are you following? What true breeding are you following? You're not. But what you can do, like I said, is follow the dogs. And that's why in this thing I read earlier, old breeders didn't show you all their cards, but you don't need them to if you know how to breed. And that's exactly what that means. Sometimes you got to accept these dogs are not bred how the papers or the pedigree says they are. But with that being said, if you know how to breed dogs, that doesn't matter. You can still breed good dogs. And as you build your family and you keep track of your own stuff, then you know how they're really bred. Unless you hang papers or you're a faker or this or that yourself, you know. Who's to say who did what and when did they do it? And every single time did they tell the truth or is there a little fudging there, here and there? Who knows? Unless you're there. And now we have DNA. Well, DNA is only good as the information that's put in. So if you have a dog DNA profiled, right? After that fact, then you know what comes down from that dog. You know the offspring, you know the progeny at least has that dog in it. Behind him, who knows, because there's no record, there's no DNA profiling of the dogs before him, right? But also, let's say a dog was DNA profiled. Dog A was DNA profiled. And he has a brother, dog B, right? If dog A is what you're using as the profile, but he was dead when you did the profile, so the profile is actually on his brother, dog B, then that's what it's going to show. You may not know the difference between A and B. They may be telling you by the dog's name that it's dog A, but the profile was actually done on dog B, who's going to take over dog A's name. So now dog A becomes dog B, and that's where the profile starts. So there's that type of situation that can occur, and I'm sure has occurred, even with DNA profiling. So it's more accurate, it can be helpful, it's going to become necessary in people's minds to have all your dogs profiled, but the basis of it, the starting point may not be the truth. Or before that starting point, you don't know what the truth is. So there's that. But if you do know how to breed dogs, in my opinion, that don't matter. I've said this before. Let's say you didn't know how any of your dogs were bred, and you got a bunch of pit bulls and you went through them and you competed with them. None of them had a pedigree. It's all unknown in a fantasy world or whatever, right? And you kept the ones that worked out and proved themselves and all that stuff. Could you breed good dogs from those dogs? Of course. Why not? That's how it was done in the first place. So why wouldn't you be able to repeat it? It may take you longer. It may have to do this and that and whatever. But yeah, you could do it without knowing the pedigrees of the dogs you're using. Because what you're doing is using dogs that are proven themselves and have been proved to produce. So that's what you're going on. And in the real world, that's what you should go on first. What the dog is and what he did should matter first. And then the pedigree matters after that. So part of this is don't get flustered and don't get too disappointed or even depressed because you don't know how some of your dogs are bred. It's not that big of a factor. If someone tells you it is, then they have to show proof where that has been a factor throughout the history of the breed, because the proof is that it hasn't. Dozens and tons and hundreds and thousands or whatever dogs have fake peds on them. Almost every one you talk about, there's a question of it. Whether that question is valid or not, whether it ever proved out to be that dog had a fake pet, or he's really bred off of this dog or that dog, Ironhead or Pistol, or Zebo's really off of Eli, or Jocko's really off of Art, or all this stuff that comes out. How is Major really bred? How is Stu Fowler really bred? Is Honey Bunch really off of Bully Son? And you know, who knows? Who cares? That's my point. Who cares? Is Finley's Bow really bred that way? All this stuff comes up. Now, whether it's pertinent or whether it's accurate or whether it's true or not, because a lot of those dogs, I would guess, are probably bred exactly the way their pedigree says. Which ones are they? Who knows? I don't know. And believe me, I got dozens of stories about all these dogs I just mentioned and a ton of other ones. And it's usually more than one story. It's usually more than one real sire to this dog. With certain Carver dogs, it's Ironhead, it's Pistol, it's Cracker, it's Zeke, it's Bolillo, it's Goras, it's, you name it, One dog, and there's a different story on who the real sire is. Was Stompanato really bred in Chicago? The person that says he was, the guy who bred him, is still alive. So, is he really a Corvino dog? Is he really a Eli dog? That question comes up all the time. Who knows? How was Buster really bred? Is he a Jim Williams dog? Is he really off of Bully Son? Is he really off of Pistol? Who knows? Who cares in that respect? And people say, I want to know the truth. Well, I want to know the truth too, but sometimes the truth ain't there for you. So if you get hung up on that, always trying to find the truth, then it may take away from you paying attention to your dogs and choosing the best ones and then breeding them and see how they produce. Because generally when the truth, quote unquote, the truth is found out, it's years and years after the dog has died, and at that point it doesn't matter anyway. It's just, okay, I found out the real truth. Some people, that's good enough. But as far as breeding dogs, at that point it doesn't matter. And it seems kind of chicken shit sometimes, but that's what I've learned to accept. None of it is true. Some of it is true. All of it is true. Who knows? Because you just rack your brain. When some discrepancy comes up, I don't take it at face value, because like I said, I've heard different stories about different dogs. What I do is I ask questions. And some of the questions I ask is, when was the dog born? And when is the real reported sire? When was he born? When was the litter whelped? On whose yard? Who did it? All these questions I have, and get very little answers for them. Nobody knows. Nobody keeps records. And I'm sure, like with the ADBA or something, or even my registry, we do have records. But going in the past, a lot of them don't. The ADBA would have a bunch of them. Are they going to divulge them? I don't know. Would they match up? How many times was Bully Son and Arts Missy bred to have 24 or 32 or however many puppies out of one breeding? My concern, and this comes with learning and accepting certain things that I don't like, and that's just the way it is. But my concern about if I had gotten dogs from Carver would be, did Carver make the breedings, and were they good dogs? If those two questions were answered, yeah, those dogs came from Carver, and he bred good dogs, then that would be my only concern. Okay, I got a Carver dog, and it has to be that way with everybody. We talk about Carver because admittedly that's what he did. He said he did it. We know other breeders that did it. It's come out. And then you go, okay, how is it really bred? Oh, it's really this and that. Okay. How does that help you? People will say, well, it'll help you, and you know which direction to breed. You know how to go with it. You know what to do with it. That's true. But by not knowing, did that hamper you from making your breedings? Did that stop you from finding out which ones worked, bred to which what? Did it stop you from doing that? Did you make your own dogs the way you wanted to make them? Did you follow the dogs that produce? Did you follow the dogs that had the traits that you liked that were able to pass them on? If you do that, then you're successful. And if it bothers you that much that dogs in the past had fake PEDs or unknown PEDs, then don't do that yourself. That's the best way to fix it. Don't repeat what them old people did. If you think it's wrong for them to do that, and in some cases, yeah, I think it's wrong for them to do that. And if you think they shouldn't have done it, or you think it's not right that things happen that way, then you change it with your own family of dogs. You do things right. You make things right. You be honest. You have integrity. It should matter to you. And that's the only way you can fix it. But if you're going to harp on what happened in the past, or you had some bad deal with some person and the result wasn't good, then that's just a learning lesson with that person. Don't deal with them anymore. Or you find out, your dog's not really bred that way, it's really bred this way. Maybe take my attitude. I don't care. So what? Because you're either going to keep the dog and use it, if it turns out, or you're going to cull it and it don't matter how it was bred anyways. That may happen more often than not. Because the numbers are, there's more culls than good dogs, right? So it doesn't matter how them culls were bred. And the good dogs, yes, it does matter, but it should matter going forward from when you got them and what you did with them. That should matter most. So here's a little question. Here's a little video on something that comes up, about, unknown PEDs and fake PEDs and people changing PEDs and all that, You don't need to know exactly how they were bred for you to go forward with it. If you know how to breed, honestly, that stuff in the past, it don't matter. It don't. That's been proven over and over again by yourself without you really realizing it. Because the same thing that happened to you, fake PED and all that stuff behind, it was the same with them old breeders too. Same thing with Carver, where he got his dogs from. They probably had fake PEDs on them too. So he just took what he got and went forward with it. And you could say that about Boudreaux and Crenshaw and Lapasse and Feely and Colby and all that. Yeah, there's some unknown and fakes back there too. They knew how to breed, so that's why they were successful. So there's a little bit on that. Feel free to comment. Thanks for your support, as always.